Picture this. It's a sunny Monday morning in Nice, France, back in July 1976. The main bank on the city's busiest street can't open its vault. Customers are getting cranky, waiting for their money. The bank staff are sweating, trying to explain that the door sometimes gets stuck. This isn't just any bank. It's a huge fortress that takes up a whole city block. As the morning goes on, safe experts show up to help, but that stubborn door won't budge. By lunchtime, they decide to break through the wall next to the door. Think about the sound of jackhammers hitting the bank. Finally, in the afternoon, they make a tiny hole. That's when everything changes. Suddenly, the bank is crawling with every important cop in Nice. They all take turns peeking through that little hole. What they see inside is wild. It looks like a tornado hit a paper factory. There's valuable stuff scattered everywhere. Checks, bonds, stocks, even people's wills. The scene tells a clear story. Someone had thrown a massive robbery party, and the bank vault was their playground. Now here's where the story takes an even wilder turn. The cops realize they're not just dealing with one vault, but 3 connected ones. There's a chance the robbers might still be inside, armed and dangerous. So they pick the smallest detective, Pierre Lecoq, to squeeze through the hole. But the robbers are long gone. They've made off with a whopping $10 million in cash, gold, and jewels. They broke into over 300 safe deposit boxes to get their loot. This isn't just any bank job, it's the biggest, most creative heist in history. Lecoq starts exploring the vault, and boy, does he find some surprises. The vault door wasn't broken. The thieves welded it shut from the inside. He discovers a tunnel, a little kitchen setup, and leftover food. These criminals had been camping out in the vault all weekend, cooking meals and drinking wine while they worked. The robbers left some artwork on the walls, graffiti messages for the cops to find. They even used some fancy silver items they stole as makeshift toilets. As the big vault door finally swings open, the police chiefs step in. They see the burnt-out safes, the tunnel entrance, and important papers scattered all over the floor. The police chiefs stand there, speechless. They've seen plenty of crime scenes, but this one leaves them in awe. It's like they've stepped into a movie set, not a real bank vault. On the wall, there's a peace sign with a cheeky message: without weapons, without violence, without hate. It's as if the robbers are bragging about how clever they are. As they look around, they keep finding more surprises. There's jewelry everywhere, necklaces, rings, and brooches. But get this, the thieves only took stuff that couldn't be traced. They even left behind a bag full of pearl necklaces. But the real showstopper is the tunnel. It's a tiny hole high up on the back wall, barely big enough for a person to squeeze through. The cops shine their flashlights into it, amazed at what they see. They send a detective crawling in. He reports back that it's an engineering marvel. The tunnel is about 30 feet long, with supports every few feet to keep it from collapsing. There's even carpeting on the floor, and a tube bringing in fresh air. These robbers thought of everything. As expected, the tunnel leads to the sewer line behind the bank. The detectives spend over a week exploring the city's sewers. They find an electrical cable that stretches for half a mile, all the way to the main square's parking lot. But that's not all. The cops figure out the robbers didn't just use the sewers. They discover another route that leads to an underground river. The gang drove a truck underground, right under the city. They brought their gear the last bit of the way on rubber rafts floating through the sewer. After the initial shock wears off, the mood in the bank turns gloomy. The detectives realize just how much work they have ahead of them. They have to catalog every single item left behind, every tool, every jewel, every scrap of paper. It's going to take a team of 12 detectives 4 whole days just to do that. They also have to check for fingerprints on every surface, even though they can see the robbers wore gloves. In the end, they only find one print, and it doesn't match anyone they know. Some newspapers suggest the thieves might be from Italy since the borders close, but the cops know better. Criminals like to work where they're comfortable and know the lay of the land. So they put all 900 of Nice's detectives on the case. They're told to talk to every snitch they know, asking what rumors are floating around. They even reach out to police in nearby villages, asking if anyone's noticed anything odd lately. The investigation keeps getting more complicated. The cops have to track down where those 27 gas tanks came from. They also need to find out who sold half a mile of electrical wire. It's not some something you buy every day? They're thinking about checking with every hardware store in France, if they have to. Of course, the thieves might have stolen all this stuff or smuggled it in from another country, so now they have to alert all the border crossings too. It's like trying to solve a giant puzzle with pieces scattered all over the place. The main detectives on the case, about 30 of them, realize they can kiss their summer vacations goodbye. They're going to be working non-stop for a while. That message on the wall, without weapons, without violence, without hate, really gets under the skin of one of the police chiefs, Ivan Zanin. He knows the newspapers are going to call this the heist of the century, and people all over the world will be amazed by it. But Zanin's not impressed. He believes this is about more than just a clever robbery. It's about whether we think it's okay for people to own things and keep them safe. The police chiefs start giving out jobs to their detectives. Interestingly, they've already figured out the name of one of the robbers, but they're not telling the reporters waiting outside. In fact, they decide not to say anything to the public for over 3 months. They want to work quietly without any distractions. Now, France's police system is pretty different from what you might be used to. Instead of thousands of different police departments, like in the US, France only has a few main police groups. There's one big national police force with about 105,000 officers. Most of these are the uniformed cops you see in towns and cities. Then there's another group called the Gendarmerie Nationale with 65,000 members. They're part of the army, and they handle military crimes in patrol villages and highways. The main detective agency in France is called the Police Judiciaire, or PJ for short. They've got 18,000 detectives and all the best labs. Usually they take charge of big cases like this one, but interestingly, the first 2 big breaks in the case come from other police groups. There's another detective force called the Sûreté Urbaine. They're smaller, with fewer than 6,000 officers spread out across the country. These guys handle the everyday crimes in towns and cities. You know, the usual murders, robberies, that kind of thing. Criminals there tend to stick to their own cities, which makes the detective's job a bit easier. The Sûreté Urbaine detectives have an interesting way of working. They make it their business to know every criminal in town by sight. They're always barging into bars and hangouts, checking people's ID cards, and sometimes even searching for them. In France, they can get away with this a lot more easily than cops in America could. Now, here's where it gets interesting. A few nights before the big bank job, one of these detectives, Inspector Boschetti, is driving around Nice. He spots a car with 2 guys in it. He recognizes one of them as Daniel Michelucci, a known troublemaker, but he doesn't know the other guy. So, what does Boschetti do? He pulls them over, checks their ID cards, and searches their car. In the US, this would be illegal, without a good reason, but in France, it's just how things work. In Michelucci's car trunk, Boschetti sees some unusual chisels. They're 18 inches long, made of tempered steel, sharp-pointed and painted red. They're designed for hammering through reinforced concrete and stick in Boschetti's mind. No crime has been committed, so Boschetti lets the car and chisels go. A week later, Boschetti is assigned to search the debris in a devastated bank vault. He spots the muddy red chisels on the floor, grabs one, and tells his superior, "I controlled a car with a trunk full of these just the other night." This information reaches the PJ, and Daniel Michelucci's name is noted. Michelucci's name comes up again when a deluge of information floods in from nearby gendarmeries in response to the PJ's appeal. Each lead is checked, but only one connects to the July 16th or 19th break-in. On July 9th, the Plan du Var Gendarmerie logs a call about a supposedly empty villa with strange men inside. 2 gendarmes check the identities of the 5 men they find there. The men give satisfactory explanations, claiming to have borrowed the villa from the owner and providing the owners and their own names. The gendarmes leave. After the robbery, detectives revisit the villa and find an uncommon watertight flashlight, identical to those found in the vault. Its mud matches Nice sewer mud. The gendarmerie still has the names, Michelucci and 4 other known criminals. The villa must be the gang's headquarters. Detectives now have 5 names and grow contemptuous of the criminals. Wouldn't you think, one says, if they wanted to stay unnoticed, they'd pick a hideout in the middle of a city, not a village? None of the 5 seems capable of organizing such a crime. The brain of the sewer gang must be someone else, and clearly, more than 5 men are involved, perhaps as many as 20. Detectives tail the 5 suspects and some of their associates, like Michelucci's younger brother Henri. a professional burglar. Legal wiretaps are also put in place. The police net widens, weeks pass. With so many detectives asking questions and so many people being followed, there's a growing risk that someone will sense the pressure and the sewer gang will flee. A Société Générale branch in Paris is then looted via the sewers. The nice gang is suspected, but the Paris crime is clumsy and sloppy. Likely a different gang, the nice investigation resumes. More time passes. Then Adrien Zeppi, 54, and Francis Pellegrin, 38, are caught in a bank in Roquefort-le-Pin trying to sell gold ingots matching those stolen in Nice. Neither Zeppi nor Pellegrin is previously known to the police, and neither was at the Castagnier villa when the gendarmes inspected it. Their arrests compromise the entire investigation as their absence is noticed. The PJ detectives decide they can wait no longer and proceed with the little evidence they have. On October 26th, the 100th day of the investigation, 27 people are rounded up in Nice, Marseille, Paris, and other cities by 250 cops, detectives, and gendarmes. These individuals, including suspects, associates, and family members, are brought to PJ headquarters in Paris and Marseille. Held under a procedure called garde à vue for 48 hours, the subjects cannot be touched and have limited rights, such as access to a doctor, but no counsel. They are interrogated intensely, with breaks depending on the stamina of the interrogators. Many crack under the psychological pressure. 13 subjects held in Paris are released without charges. In Marseille, the story is different. After 48 hours, all but 7 subjects are allowed to go home. Zeppi, Pellegrin, and 5 others are brought before Judge Richard Bouazis in Nice. Bouazis examines the evidence and statements and indicts 6 of the 7 for complicity in the bank robbery, ordering them to prison. The 7th, Homer Philippi, is jailed for possessing an illegal gun during his arrest. Despite the arrest, the detectives know the brain of the sewer gang is still at large. They haven't even captured Daniel Michelucci, the transporter of the red chisels. Though they have his younger brother Henry, they learn Daniel has a safe deposit box in Brussels. When Daniel and his girlfriend Michelle Ciaglio visit the bank, Brussels police arrest them. They find 420,000 francs and 6 stolen gold ingots in Daniel's lockbox. Still, Daniel was not the brain. The detectives suspect a master criminal, unknown in police circles. They eventually get a tip, leading them to a new suspect, Albert Spaggiari. Spaggiari, 44, is a photographer in Nice, living a seemingly normal life with his wife Marcel. Despite the lack of concrete proof, the detectives decide to arrest him, hoping he will crack during the 48-hour garde à vue. Albert Spaggiari, 44, is a photographer with a shop in Nice. He develops photos, takes wedding pictures, and is known at Town Hall. About 5 years ago, they bought a ruined farm in the Maritime Alps, 25 miles north of Nice. They rebuilt the house, calling it the Wild Geese. They plant corn, raise chickens, and enjoy a serene life. On October 28th, Bert and Marcel have lunch with a friend, Jean-Yves Gartron. Bert mentions a strange phone call about a business meeting. Soon, Bert is seen being driven away with 2 men. Marcel and Gartron rush to the police, who inform Marcel that Bert is the brain behind the sewer gang. The garde à vue begins at 2:30 p.m. Detectives interrogate Bert non-stop, but he insists they have the wrong man. He refuses a doctor, cooperates fully, and remains calm. Meanwhile, Marcel is also held and questioned. Detectives search the wild geese, but find nothing incriminating. In 1958, Albert Spaggiari goes to North Africa, works as a boilermaker, and joins the right-wing secret army, fighting against Algerian independence. He offers to assassinate General de Gaulle, but is refused. Later, he is arrested for political terrorism and spends 3.5 years in jail. He brushes with the law, but mostly on political and military matters, so he isn't a ready suspect for the PJ. The interrogators are hopeful as the second night of the garde à vue begins. They use every tactic, including details Marcel inadvertently disclosed and a strange message from Interpol about someone claiming to be Bert, offering services to the CIA. After 36 hours, Bert cracks. He admits to being the brain. He rented a box at the Société Générale 2 years ago and got the idea for the heist. He photographs the vault, scouts the sewers, and procures the sewer plans from Town Hall. He needs specialized tools and financial backing, so he goes to the Marseille mob, forming 2 teams of 10 men each. For 2 months, they dig the tunnel every night, blocking the entrance each dawn. On July 17th, they break through the final 18 inches of concrete, finding an immovable armored armoire. For 2.5 days, they work in perfect camaraderie, welding shut the vault door and cutting open the safes. They find a chute leading to the after-hours deposit locker, cash reserves, and treasures in the lockboxes. By Monday morning, they decide against leaving a banal message and choose a different one. Bert refuses to name his political accomplices and claims he donates his share of the loot to a right-wing organization called Katina, which the detectives doubt exists. Bert is brought before Judge Buwazis, where he repeats his confession. He points out details at the bank that satisfy Buwazis and the detectives that he is the brain. As he is led back to the van, the crowd cheers, and someone asks, "Any regrets, Bert?" Bert, pleased with himself, smiles and replies, "I regret nothing." And there you have it, folks, the sewer gang's audacious heist, leaving detectives scratching their heads and us craving more. Hit subscribe, ring that bell, and let's unravel history's greatest mysteries together. See you in the next video.